Welcome to the Bishop and Knight mate, one of the most demanding positions that I've ever had the joy of playing. Now, to get a first sense of how hard it is, what you'll need to understand is that with the Bishop and Knight checkmate, you're really allowed to use both the Bishop and Knight and the King to force the Black King to the side of the board. Here, however, you are only allowed to use the King and the Knight. And so once you have some experience with the Bishop and Knight ending and say to yourself, oh, that's kind of hard. Here you have to say, oh, now we have to push the Black King with just the King and the Knight. Why? Because if our blockader Knight moves, the Knight on c4, we will not be able to force a mate. Because the mating process is very clear, we have to push the guy into a corner, put him in stalemate, and then once we put him in stalemate, then we need to bring our knight in for the final kill, as it were, and that pawn needs to have some moves to play, and we'll see that in some examples. Okay, now I want to begin by saying that chess doesn't always feel like a spiritual activity to me, sadly. A lot of times I'm doing dumb things like I'm playing blitz and I'm just relaxing, and honestly I'm not getting better and I'm not having a fulfilling life. Every time I've done this thing, however, it has felt like a spiritual journey because there's so much visualization of square control to get the king, to corral him with just the king and the knight. And I think I've kind of got it down now, but every time I do it, it's not like it comes easily. Like the bishop and knight mate, I can do that in under 30 seconds. But this thing, even though I did do it in all these games, I did it in under a couple minutes, but still required a lot of energy from me. All right, so let's take a look. I was white here, and I'm not going to claim that the moves I played here were the most accurate, but in contrast, I just wanted to show you how I did it to get you a sense of how maybe you might do it too. So the first thing I want to say, we're going to go from examples of easiest to hardest, this being the easiest. And let's note that it's of great benefit to white in this position that his knight on c4 is closer to the middle of the board because that gives us more squares to control. The more squares we can control, the better. We're going to look at later examples when we're on the A file, and then corralling the king is just much harder because the knight's influence is so much less. Okay, even here we should mention b2, and b6, because the king can really run around everywhere. Okay, so the first thing I did is I played knight h6 controlling g4. And the king already has a little bit of grief. And by the way, I will say we're going to look at me playing the computer. It's much harder. Humans do things that just make it easy for us. And that will be a key point in my final takeaway message with this. King e2, king e4, and this is one of the standard positions, I would say, where we've got a knight taking away this square, and he's going to now be forced to move with zugzwang. King f2, knight f5. Honestly, it's already looking pretty good. King e3, and this is making it easy, and this is the final countdown, really, and like in the bishop and knight mate, which is a good precursor lesson to this one, really a necessity. If we were in a scholastic course, the bishop and knight mate would be the prerequisite to get into this one. And we control this square, he's in the box, and now we have an easy finish, really. Easily making it in time. Okay, that makes it look easy. We're going to see it gets a lot harder. Okay, so the next example was against the same student. And again, the two knights, and this time the pawn not too far advanced. I was just practicing here. Let's see how it goes. Cutting the square. And this is a standard maneuver that I like a lot, where maybe the computer would have something more elegant, but this to me is just very simple. So what I did, let's go back actually a second. So the first thing, we're going to need to push him basically away from c5. So I take away c4, and now I take away c5, just one square at a time. And this is a curious thing about where to put the king, right? So now I'm visualizing that if he goes here, I go here, and we have the pattern we've talked about before. And if he goes here, then I can take away either b5 or b3. So he goes c6, c4, knight d6, same pattern. I'm just taking it away, same pattern, one square at a time, just marching it over. And already there's the same pattern again. So I'm just using these patterns to push the king back one bit at a time. Yeah, just the same thing. Yeah, beautiful. And now it's getting very close. And one cool thing about positions like this is even the knight on h5 might have a role later in controlling the squares. And you can see that what I did with knight f4 that's kind of clever is I've got this wall. So if he came toward my knights, then he would have no approach onto the h5 knight. I will say this, if you're defending, the really annoying thing to do is to go attack the knight. It's very difficult to deal with because then you have to dislodge the king. So in my practice so far, I've really tried to avoid letting the king attack the knight. In some of my practice games against the computer did manage to hold a couple times just because it was so annoying when it came and attacked my knight. And this one is all the way gone. And I like this knight b7 as an example, the fianchettoed knight. Kind of like the W in the bishop and knight mate, where the knight goes to d7. It's a little anti-intuitive. What knight b7 sets up is a pattern of domination here, where controlling b7 is very vital, as is c8. And now we've got him completely in the box, right? Now it won't be hard. Boom. Okay, again, the pawn's not close, but you can see the pawn could in fact be already a queen, and it would still be mate. Okay, now we're going to take a look at a harder one. This one I played against Stockfish, rated 3,000, level AI level 8. And I wanted to practice it out to make sure I could really do it every time. And it's a very difficult thing against the machine because the machine will do anti-intuitive things that kind of throw a human's patterns off guard. But let's take a look at how this went. Just taking away squares, same process as before, right? Now, if it was, let's say his king was on c5, then I could do this, and then I would be pushing him back. But now, I kind of have to regroup. And the first stage is just going to be pushing him out of the center, which in a lot of ways is the hardest. Now, again, maybe the moves I made here weren't exactly accurate, and I wanted to be honest about that because I know that in a real game, we don't have time to do it either, so I wanted to be able to do it, this I think I did in under 3 minutes. Taking away some squares, and the thing was always trying to be really annoying. Going over to my other knight. Okay, so take away the square, push him over. Okay, knight d4. Making some progress. I think the machine makes it's funny to talk about machine doing practical things, but by going over to e7, now I have to worry about him going over to tap my knight on a4, which would just be incredibly annoying. So my next couple moves, maybe I got it wrong, but let's just see how it went. King d5, same pattern. And it's hard. It's just hard. Okay, so I want to stress, maybe a lot of these moves aren't completely correct, but this is one of the positions where it's hard to come up with a plan. And like I said, maybe this one isn't the very best, but I think it's okay as an idea anyway. Knight c2 looks weird. I'm controlling this, so if he plays king here, I have this pattern, right? By the way, if he goes this way, by this way I mean to let's say this direction, then my knight on a4 might really help out. Okay, then as if he goes in the game, then I have this one, and I'm also pushing him here. Now this was hard. So we've seen this pattern before. King d6. We've seen this pattern before. In a lot of ways, this is the fundamental pushback pattern that we're looking for. Now, let's just stress, if you'd gone to g7, then knight e5 would come, and it feels like I'm making a little bit of progress. This, though, very frightening, right? Am I making progress? A little bit hard to say. And here he's got a choice, but if king h4, then I'm going to play knight g6. King g4, again, the same pattern. All right. I can well imagine that I haven't been exactly accurate, but again, I'm just trying to show the process here. Now, the part where it gets scary, of course, is now, is he going to go tap my knight, or am I going to actually be able to corral him? And maybe this was a little bit inaccurate, but now I was starting to feel pretty good about it. Knight f4. So here we have the pattern with knight h5, kind of an unintuitive move. And beast goes this way. And if d8, of course, then I'm going this way, and he will be stuck. In the game, the computer does this. And now it's pretty basic. Boom. Boom. Mate. Okay, very difficult thing to do. Notice that that was actually 44 moves, but bear in mind, once he plays a4, and that was actually a move 40, that doesn't count. I mean, the 50 move rule resets. So you do get that as an extra bonus. All right, now let me talk about this on a practical level. There's a famous thing that I don't think you actually need to know called the Troitsky line. And it goes something like this. Let me just light up some squares. I think it goes like this. And it's like, well, if there's a black pawn on any of those squares and your knight is blockading it, you're going to win that game. One thing I want to stress, though, is that in a practical game, it's not necessarily true, because it depends a lot on where the black king goes and on which square the black king is. For example, in this position, if the black king is on g1, then we're winning because we can do this. And we're just in time. However, if the black king is on h1, excuse me, we got in this position. If the black king is on h1, not going to work out. It's just knight c3, a2. It's already gone. So it really depends a lot on the defender's ability in the practical sense of where to go in a real game. And there's a great example on YouTube where Karyakin won a technically drawn knight endgame in very similar fashion. And finally, one reason I really had to do this video, I was inspired to do this video, is I played a fun training match with I.M. Kostya-Kavutsky. And he, I was totally winning one game, and we got a position where he sacked to get the two knights. Very clever, very clever. And, this isn't the position the king was like over here, and we in fact had reverse colors. But the point is, I could have achieved this position. And I was so angry at myself for having allowed this that I didn't, the game ended pretty quickly. And of course we were, just with 2 seconds or whatever, just a fun game. But the point is, these positions do happen in real games. And it's not just a beautiful exercise, though it definitely is something, at least I find something that is interesting in and of itself as an exercise to understand chess, but also to experience a lot of the beauty of chess with these patterns. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.